2,000 people are dead. Did you see anybody coming to save us?
Guys! We are talking Festival of the Dead, and this is directed by the Soska sisters and was made for Tubi. Now this is actually a sequel to Night of the Living Dead. Before we go any further, we should talk about Night of the Living Dead, which was obviously directed by George Romero back in the late 60s, and because of some legal shenanigans, shall we call it, Night of the Living Dead is in the public domain. This is why we always kind of see scenes from it playing on TVs when you have a horror film where someone's watching a television program or a film in the movie. And then there have been a variety of official sequels to this and unofficial kind of sequels and spin-offs. Probably the most notable spin-off sequel series is Return of the Living Dead. And this movie is actually somewhat similar to one of its sequels, which was Return of the Living Dead 5, I believe, Rave from the Grave. So Festival of the Dead is a kind of a sequel that somewhat ignores everything else that sort of came after it ultimately. And it's, it takes place, in 2024, and the events of 1968 are, there was a kind of a incident that happened in this kind of history. And one of the characters, Ash, who is our main character here, is actually the granddaughter of the character of Ben from the original movie. And effectively this group of friends, young kind of Gen Z types, end up going to this particular kind of festival, which is obviously modelled on the kind of like the Burning Man sort of style sort of festival thing that you have in America. And it is called Festival of the Dead because it's the idea being that they are celebrating and paying tribute to the event that happened, i.e. the original Night of the Living Dead. So off they go, this group of people. Along the way, they end up having an accident, and by the time they get to the festival, this kind of zombie virus is already again active, and it looks like it is because of meteorites. Anyway, and now this kind of group of survivors have to try and kind of defend themselves from various zombie hordes. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So, the Soska sisters, a somewhat cult favourite directors here. They didn't write this one, I don't think, but they are behind the directing chair. What can we say that works in this movie's favour? If you like zombie movies, this pretty much is somewhat of a standard zombie film. It has everything you're going to want to expect in a zombie film. Hordes of the undead, guts being pulled out, a dwindling kind of group of survivors trapped in an isolated area. All that kind of good stuff effectively is in this movie. The fact that it's in this kind of festival, it's a decent setting. There's a large group of people. It's somewhat isolated. It kind of makes sense. There are a couple of funny gags in this movie. It's not a horror comedy, but there are a couple of sort of comedy shots and things like that, and gags. Like, for example, one guy is getting eaten, but he's still vlogging on purpose and things like that. And the Soska sisters have a small kind of cameo in the movie as well. I think the acting, is solid. I have seen some of these actors in various TV programs. I've recognised one of them from the Gotham TV show. She played the Catwoman character, and a couple of other ones as well. So the acting I didn't think was kind of too bad, to be honest. It does try to have that somewhat mirror up to society, very much like the original Night of the Living Dead, tried to do, and I think successfully did. This one, less so, but there is an attempt here to have the real monsters are the kind of human condition and how quickly society kind of falls apart, and that was the theme of the original movie, and it's clumsily kind of retold here, but there is an attempt, I would say. There is a lot of extras, so this does feel like it has a reasonable kind of production value on it. And the zombie makeup is reasonable as well. Now, we'll come back on to some of those points and the negatives, but yeah, the zombie makeup is somewhat pronounced considering these are freshly turned people. But yeah, you know, it kind of looks cool, I guess. But let's now transition to what doesn't work. And let me just stay with that point. So there are changes here. Don't be expecting this to follow the same rules as Night of the Living Dead. So one of the things is the look of the zombies, because they kind of turn like decomposed and horrific pretty much straight away, which doesn't really make sense when you are considering these are meant to be effectively deceased animated corpses that would rot. But these are people who have only just turned. There's no, they wouldn't be looking like that this kind of quickly. They kind of almost look more like possessed people, which again is not what the original movie or its follow-ups really did. You know, its official kind of follow-ups. And then the way the zombies act is more like the zombies from the Return of the Living Dead series. They seem to be a little more intelligent. They seem to be able to run, climb, things like this. Very much like the zombies from Return of the Living Dead, rather than the zombies from, you know, Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead and things. So the zombies are kind of deviate somewhat from the kind of the zombies that the source material is based on. Now, you know, you kind of wonder, did these filmmakers actually see Night of the Living Dead? Because it doesn't really feel like it's the same zombies, especially when it has a direct correlation between, you know, we have a character here, is the granddaughter of a character in the original movie. Now, the other thing as well I would say is that this film doesn't really address, if it's setting up, this is, you know, a sequel that has happened 50 or so years later on, you know, we don't really get much context about the world or on how that event has changed it. It's just kind of like, yeah, we go to this festival to celebrate this, you know, rising up of the dead, and people just kind of are okay with it. And then, you know, I guess this is a festival that's happening, you know, every year. But why hasn't this happened before? These sort of meteors are kind of there, it seems. I don't know. There's a lot of things here that are just kind of like, nah, don't worry about it. That's, you know, that's small potatoes in regards to the plot. So plot-wise, it's a little lacking in regards to its kind of world building, I feel. Now let's transition to the characters. And I think this is a problem if I had to pick one problem, this would be it. The characters here, a lot of them are unlikable. Some of them are meant to be. For example, we have our two sort of like main male characters have practically the same personality. And I didn't really understand why we had to have two practically identical characters. And then to dive a little deeper into that, we have one of the characters says they have dialed, this is really before they know anything's really going on, but at this point one of their friends is hurt and has been in a car accident, and they say that they have dialed an ambulance, but they haven't. And it was like, well, why haven't you? The film doesn't give us any explanation for it. It just goes, well, they haven't. You know, yeah, we meant to believe he's an a-hole, but why wouldn't you do that? So there's no real reason. He wasn't driving. Why wouldn't he do it? It doesn't really make sense. And he kind of lies about it and says that he's done it. Again, they're just kind of like, yeah, he's an a-hole character. You kind of know where it's going to end up. And then with our more altruistic characters, like our main character, you know, she's our protagonist. She's the good guy. But damn, she's vanilla. She's just like a typical sort of like good guy, you know, follow the leader sort of type character who is just like the altruistic one, but there's nothing really else in her character. Not badly acted, but the character is just there's just nothing there really. The most interesting character to me was they got a guy who's like paraplegic, and he seems to be a little bit more kind of chilled out than the others, but again, he doesn't really get a huge amount of screen time, and I thought he was a bit more of a unique character. But you know, a lot of the characters are just arseholes, or they're just kind of like, you know, just typical kind of like good guy characters. The actual film slows down, I think, from time to time to have these kind of like emotional beats and kind of like dramatic moments. I have to say, I didn't really think they worked. I just think they were kind of plonked in there to try and have some, you know, context and some reflection against the human condition, etc. But I didn't really feel they were particularly kind of successful in that. And it kind of fails to have that fear factor that the zombie films can have. But I feel because there is so many of them now, it is a harder task to make this a film about zombies really be that kind of scary. Instead, it kind of leans onto more of a comedic and chaotic route. Overall, you know, I think it's a bit of a poison chalice to kind of tie this into Night of the Living Dead, because people will then expect that level of quality, and it hasn't got that. But overall, I have seen worse zombie films. It still was relatively entertaining. To me, it's somewhat of a typical lower budget zombie film. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What do you think? Please do leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.